हि अभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 32, Text 28. Text 28. Jnanam ekam parachinair indriyair brahma nirgunam avabhati artharupena bhrantya shabdadi dharmina. Jnanam ekam parachinair indriyair brahma nirgunam avabhati artharupena bhrantya shabdadi dharmina. Jnanam ekam parachinair indriyair brahma nirgunam avabhati artharupena bhrantya shabdadi dharmina. Synonyms: Jnanam, knowledge; ekam, one; parachinair, averse; indriya, by the senses; Brahma, the supreme absolute truth; nirgunam, beyond the material modes; avabhati, appears; artharupena, in the form of various objects; bhrantya, mistakenly; Shabda Adi, sound, and so on; Dharmina, endowed with. Translation: those who are averse to the transcendence realize the supreme absolute truth differently through speculative sense perception, and therefore, because of mistaken speculation, everything appears to them to be relative. Purport: the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is one, and he is spread everywhere by his impersonal feature. This is clearly expressed in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna says, everything that is experienced is but an expansion of my energy. Everything is sustained by him, but that does not mean that he is in everything. Sense perceptions, such as oral perception of the sound of a drum, visual perception of a beautiful woman, or perception of the delicious taste of a milk preparation by the tongue, all come through different senses and are therefore differently understood. Therefore, sensory knowledge is divided in different categories, although actually everything is one as a manifestation of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the energies of fire are heat and illumination. And by these two energies, fire can display itself in many varieties or in diversified sense perception. Mayavadi philosophers declare this diversity to be false, but Vaishnava philosophers do not accept the different manifestations as false. They accept them as non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are a display of his diverse energies. The philosophy that the absolute is true and this creation is false, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, is not accepted by Vaishnava philosophers. The example is given that although all that glitters is not gold, this does not mean that a glittering object is false. For example, an oyster shell appears to be golden. This appearance of golden hue is due only to the perception of the eyes, but that does not mean that the oyster shell is false. Similarly, by seeing the form of Lord Krishna, one cannot understand what he actually is, but that does not mean that he is false. The form of Krishna has to be understood as it is described in the books of knowledge, such as Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. By our imperfect sense perception, we cannot understand the form of the Lord. We have to acquire knowledge about him. Therefore, it is said here, Jnanam Ekam. Bhagavad Gita confirms that they are fools who simply upon seeing Krishna consider him a common man. They do not know the ultimate knowledge, the unlimited knowledge, power, and opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material sense speculation leads to the conclusion that the Supreme is formless. It is because of such mental speculation that the conditioned soul remains in ignorance under the spell of illusory energy. The Supreme Person has to be understood by the transcendental sound vibrated by him in Bhagavad Gita, wherein he says that there is nothing superior to him. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is resting on his personality. The purified absolute vision of Bhagavad Gita is compared to the river Ganges. Ganges water is so pure that it can purify even the asses and cows. But anyone who disregards the pure waters wishes to be purified instead by the filthy water flowing in a drain cannot be successful. Similarly, one can successfully attain pure knowledge of the Absolute only by hearing from the pure Absolute himself. In this verse, it is clearly said that those who are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead speculate with their imperfect senses about the nature of the Absolute Truth. The formless Brahman conception, however, can be received only by oral reception and not by personal experience. Knowledge is therefore acquired by oral reception. It is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Shastra Yonitvat. One has to acquire pure knowledge from the authorized scriptures. So-called speculative arguments about the absolute truth are therefore useless. The actual identity of the living entity is his consciousness, which is always present while the living entity is awake, dreaming, or in deep sleep. Even in deep sleep, he can perceive by consciousness whether he is happy or distressed. Thus, when consciousness is displayed through the medium of the subtle and gross material bodies, it is covered. But when the consciousness is purified in Krishna consciousness, one becomes free from the entanglement of repeated birth and death. When uncontaminated pure knowledge is uncovered from the modes of material nature, the actual identity of the living entity is discovered. He is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process of uncovering is like this. The rays of sunshine are luminous, and the sun itself is also luminous. In the presence of the sun, the rays illuminate just like the sun. But when the sunshine is covered by the spell of a cloud or by Maya, then darkness, the imperfection of perception begins. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of the spell of missions, one has to awaken his spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness in terms of the authorized scriptures. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशातारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे. I would like to seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to read from Srimad Bhagavatam for my purification, and please forgive me for any shortcomings or misinterpretation. So for today, I have taken some points from a lecture on this verse by His Grace Kamal Lochan Das. Pure devotional service nourishes bhakti, which the Vaishnavas accept, but there is a branch of knowledge called Vivartavad. When you try to see the absolute from a material point of view, that is the time you are called a Mayavadi. Here Lord Kapila is talking about Vivartavad. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 6.169 says, Mayavadi Bhasya Sunile Haish Sarvanash. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore warns us to avoid these commentaries. If one indulges in hearing the Shankarite Sharirika Bhasya, he will certainly be bereft of all real knowledge. Shripad Shankaracharya gave a lot of importance to Vivartavad. In simple English, Vivartavad means the theory of illusion, the philosophy that the absolute is true and this creation is false. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Vaishnava philosophers know that the material creation, being an emanation from the Supreme Lord, is temporary, but it is not false. When a conditioned soul is under illusion in the material world due to a lack of spiritual knowledge, he becomes frustrated and suffers. Then he imposes that same idea on transcendence. There are some Mayavadis who see this world and run away. They have had a bad experience in the material world and they superimpose that same image on divinity. Many forms have given them a lot of pain and suffering. So when they visit the temple and see the form of the Lord, they assume that this form will also give me trouble. They think that this is also Maya. Then they conclude that whatever they see is Maya. Material sense speculation leads to the conclusion that the Supreme is formless. They believe that real happiness is only possible in a place where there are no senses, no forms, no tastes. The Supreme Person has to be understood by the transcendental sound vibration by him in the Vedic scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Vaishnavas are fully aware of the potential for spiritual senses, spiritual forms, and spiritual tastes. For example, if a person has read many books of knowledge and then he is given a Bhagavad Gita, he will compare the Bhagavad Gita to the other books. If a person sees a statue of a national hero with a garland and then he sees the deity in the temple with a garland, they will both appear similar to him. He may even appreciate the standard of cleanliness in the temple, but that does not mean that he has any knowledge of the transcendental nature of the Lord. Without having knowledge of the transcendental nature of the Lord and the divine nature of the scriptures, the conditioned soul will become more and more entangled in the material world. If we have read Srila Prabhupada's purports, we will notice that he again and again emphasizes the transcendence of the Supreme Lord beyond the material modes. The scriptures may talk about the Lord in contradictory ways, but in the ultimate analysis, all contradictions are resolved or neutralized in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Only by understanding this can one be established in Sambandh Gyan. Here we are being encouraged to receive spiritual knowledge from authorized scriptures. Speculative arguments about the absolute truth are useless. A nice verse that talks about transcendence is Bhagavad Gita 3.15. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagne pratishthitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Another nice verse, Bhagavad Gita 6.19, talks about who is a transcendentalist. Yatha dipo nivatastho nen gate sopama smrita yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogam atmanaha. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. So in conclusion, the material world is real, though temporary, and the spiritual world is also real and permanent. Going back home, back to Godhead, is the best destination, and it is possible in full Krishna consciousness. So I would like to end here. Thank you all. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhaeva cha patitana